Hello and welcome to Mysteries of Science. I'm Kieran, the features editor of Science+Nature, the monthly magazine from the team behind The Week Junior.
And I'm Stevie, the assistant editor. Today, we're going to be investigating an absolute classic mystery, one that people have been talking about for decades.
This is such a good one. It was actually a listener who got in touch to ask us to look into this particular topic, and as soon as we saw that idea, we just knew that we had to do it. It is so famous. It's an absolute classic. It is the Bermuda Triangle. Stevie, I think you know a bit more about this one than I do, so why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction?
Sure. Right. For anyone who doesn't know, the Bermuda Triangle is a section of the North Atlantic Ocean where many a ship and a plane has gone missing. These mysterious disappearances have led to some to believe that something strange is happening within the triangle. We just don't know what.
It's very spooky. This is the perfect mystery for us to investigate. So, this is Mysteries of Science.
So, that portion of the Atlantic Ocean that I mentioned before, this so-called triangle, is worth looking up on a map if you have one. It will help you picture where we're talking about. The top tip of the triangle is a group of volcanoes called Bermuda. The left tip is the east coast of the US state of Florida, and the right tip, southeast from there, near Puerto Rico.
Yeah, so I've got it up on a map here, and it is a really clear triangle shape, so tick, it lives up to that name. And most of the space inside the triangle is the Atlantic Ocean, but if you go between the left tip, so Florida, over to the right, near to Puerto Rico, you can see there's a whole lot of islands there too, so lots of treacherous water to get around.
So now that we know where to look, let's find out about the origins of the Bermuda Triangle and the first disappearance.
My name's Susan Martineau, and I'm the author of Real Life Disasters, published by Be Small Publishing. In the book, I've examined quite a few disasters, including the mysterious disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle, to try to understand what might have really happened. Well, the first one I would mention it happened in 1918, just towards the end of the First World War. There's a huge American ship called the USS Cyclops was setting off with a huge cargo, actually. I think it was manganese ore, and it was aiming for Baltimore in the USA, and it sailed from Barbados, so it went through the triangle, which wasn't called the Bermuda Triangle at that point, but it never got there. The whole ship and over 300 passengers and crew, I think it was 309 people altogether, disappeared completely, and there was no call for help. So whatever happened to them happened fast, and there was no wreckage ever found. You have to remember, of course, that it's a vast area of ocean, and I don't know what kind of search and rescue they would have had in those days either. But anyway, nothing's ever been found, even by, later on, because obviously people do dive for wrecks or send down submarines to look, but nothing's been found.
So the Cyclops is the biggest loss of life for the US naval force that doesn't directly relate to a war or conflict. Nobody doubts that the ship went missing, and to this day, it's impossible to say for sure what happened.
So that's a good start for the Bermuda Triangle. Let's hear about some of the other more famous disappearances.
In 1945, another tragedy occurred where 5 American Navy bomber planes were off on a training flight. They were based at Fort Lauderdale in Florida. And they set off on a routine training flight. And their commander, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, he sort of started sending messages back to the control tower saying he thought his compasses and his navigational equipment were not working as they should, and they were disoriented. They didn't know quite where they were. He couldn't figure out from looking down at which part of the ocean they were on. He thought he saw some islands which were a part that he thought he knew. Then he realised they weren't where they thought they were. It was all very confusing. And he was sending messages, both my compasses are out, I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale. And they were saying, we don't know where we are. They carried on flying, and then their messages got fainter and fainter, and they were obviously heading way out. And then it's thought that they must have run out of fuel. Because they were never seen again. These five planes disappeared completely, and then some rescue planes, seaplanes, went out to find them, and one of them also disappeared. Horrible. So basically, they lost 27 people that day.
It's a horrible story, and looking at the Bermuda Triangle, there are about 20 incidents altogether that have been related to something strange going on in the triangle. So there are military planes and ships that have disappeared. There's been private yachts and ships that are transporting goods from South America to the US. However, the last of those major incidents was in the 1960s. So it's been a while since there's been something happening in the triangle.
Yeah, so that is quite a while away. People often wonder what is really going on in the triangle. So what does Susan think?
I think it is the rogue waves for the very large ships that have gone down. I think that must have something to do with it.
Hold on, rogue waves? What are they?
I challenged Stephanie Warren-Drimmer, the author of Britannica's first big book of Why, to give us a quick wave recap, including rogue waves.
If you look at the ocean from far away, it can look very calm and gentle. But if you get up close to the ocean, of course you'll notice that it's not calm and gentle at all. In fact, the water is constantly moving, and we call this movement waves. The waves that you usually see at the beach are created by wind. Wind blows across the surface of the ocean, and it causes ripples to form. As the wind continues to blow, these ripples can build into bigger and bigger waves. Waves will travel across the ocean until something stops them, such as a beach. Scientists have tracked waves as they've traveled for more than a week across the open ocean. So there's a lot that we know about waves, but we don't yet know everything. There's something called rogue waves, which are enormous waves that can form out in the open ocean, seemingly out of nowhere. And they can be as tall as a building, 30 meters tall. Scientists know that rogue waves exist, but why they exist is still a mystery.
Rogue waves sound incredibly scary, and they certainly sound like a possible solution to the Bermuda Triangle problem. Although a wave would have to be really huge to take out an entire squadron of planes.
I kind of want it to be that, although I wouldn't like anyone to have to go through it, because I think it's such a fascinating thing. And one thing that might be worth mentioning about that is that they have actually recorded an oil rig had it was in the middle of I think it's the North Sea, I'm not too sure actually, but in 1995 the sensor on an oil rig during a storm where all the crew had to kind of get off deck and get into safety actually measured an 84-foot rogue wave that hit the rig, and it luckily survived, because I think it's all right. One of these rogue waves has actually taken out an oil rig in the past. So they actually have, they have recorded such a thing. So it's not a figment of somebody's imagination.
Yeah, rogue waves definitely a thing, definitely a scary explanation for the Bermuda Triangle. It certainly sounds like it's a possible thing, even though they are, from the looks of things, quite rare. Let's see what another science writer thinks of the Bermuda Triangle mystery.
Hi, I'm Nicholas St. Fleur, and I'm a science journalist. Have you ever heard a good, juicy rumor that you just think to yourself, this is too much fun, I need to share it with someone, and then you go and you tell it to someone, and then maybe you embellish it a bit, to make the story sound even better? Well, then they hear it, and maybe they embellish it a bit more as they tell it to someone else, and that's really what we see happening with a good number of these mysteries. People like having good fun telling stories, and sometimes they don't tell those stories with all the correct amount of scientific rigor that they deserve. So to me, it sounds like embellishments, and people like to think of mysteries. People like to think that, aliens might be doing this. People like to think that, there's something strange about this area. I think it's just people trying to have fun.
So Nicholas actually has quite a sensible explanation for the mystery too, that there's actually nothing unusual about the Bermuda Triangle at all.
From all the science we're looking at, the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle are not all that noteworthy compared to, what happens in the rest of the ocean. I think even there was a study that showed that, the area that has the most ship losses or the most ship that sink is somewhere in south of China, from my understanding.
So in other words, Nicholas's theory is that ships sink all the time, or at least they used to quite often, and therefore there's nothing strange going on in the triangle. It's just part of life at sea.
That's one theory, but that doesn't quite explain why so many planes have gone missing. Nicholas has some other theories, however.
There is a theory about methane bubbles, the idea being that they're coming from the bottom of the ocean and they might go underneath a ship, and you have like this bubble, and then when the bubble pops, it creates this kind of vacuum, if you will, that the ship might fall into, and then it might sink. From what I've heard or what I've been looking at, that sounds like something that could potentially happen. The big issue, the big caveat, the big problem is that we don't think we've seen methane bubbles kind of popping like that for thousands of years. Somewhere where I looked at said, something like that hasn't happened in like 15,000 years. So it doesn't seem like that's what's happening here. It really just seems like what's happening in the Bermuda Triangle is ships might sink, airplanes might have, run into bad weather conditions or something, and they might have also sunk, but not at rates that are outrageous. It just sort of happens. And we like to have some people like to have some good fun with that and say that there's something mysterious, but the science doesn't back it up.
Okay, let's recap where we're at then. So we've got the mystery, which is ships and planes going missing in the Bermuda Triangle, and our possible explanations are methane bubbles, rogue waves, or actually nothing strange happening at all. It's just sort of what goes on at sea.
That's not actually a bad list, but I reckon we can add some more crazy ideas to that.
In 1974, Charles Berlitz, he of language school fame, he published a book called The Bermuda Triangle. And I'm so old, I can remember reading that as a teenager and being absolutely enthralled by the idea that he put forward was that there was the lost city of Atlantis in the Atlantic down there in the depths. And there were these strange powers sort of emanating from crystals or parts of the city, and whoever was still lurking there, to grab these ships and planes for whatever reason. And it really captured a public imagination. There was this idea that actually it wasn't Atlantis, it was actually extraterrestrials at this point, and aliens who were coming to Earth or hovering somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle and diverting these ships and planes for whatever reason. So it was all very intriguing and very, very interesting.
Yeah, so aliens and the mythical lost city of Atlantis, they're two fantastic ideas. I feel like we're onto something.
So there's nearly as many possible explanations for the Bermuda Triangle disappearances as there are drops of water in the Atlantic Ocean. If we had more time, we could talk about magnetic fields messing with compasses, hurricanes, cold air, wormholes, water sprouts. The list goes on and on.
Yeah, and it's really fun to get caught up in the adventure of it, but we are mysteries of science, so maybe we should stick to the science a little bit. Susan has her scientific explanation. She wants the answer to be rogue waves. But what does Nicholas think?
On a scale of 1 to 100, in terms of how strange things in the Bermuda Triangle are, I think this would rank somewhere closer to the single digits. I don't think it's all that strange what's happening. I think we know and have known for at this point over 50 years that the amount of ships lost in the Bermuda Triangle is not outrageous. It's not much more than is lost elsewhere in the ocean. So, yeah, if you're thinking about cruising through the Bermuda Triangle in the future, after this whole coronavirus pandemic is over, feel free to do it. Have fun with your family. Relax. Don't let the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle keep you from having a nice, fun vacation or holiday.
Good answer, Nicholas. Stevie, what do you think's going on over in the Bermuda Triangle?
So I love to think about the fantasy of the Bermuda Triangle. I mean, the Cyclops went missing and there must have been a reason and no one knows why. We know so little about the ocean as it is. I think something must be happening. Otherwise, why would it have become such a strange phenomenon?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, do I think it's aliens? Probably not. But I think of our other ideas, it's not ridiculous to think that, maybe one of the disappearances was related to a rogue wave. One of them might have been related to some other strange phenomenon that we don't really understand yet. Because as you say, oceans are a tricky business and there are lots of things we don't yet know about them. So Who knows what's going on? And you know what? Let's put it out to our listeners. What do you think is happening in the Bermuda Triangle? I'm sure you will have a much better idea than we do. It could be any of the things we've mentioned, or maybe you know about the Bermuda Triangle already and have your own theories.
The best way to get in touch is to record an audio clip or video on a phone and email it over to us at hello@science-nature.co.uk. You could tell us what you think about the Bermuda Triangle mystery or give us an idea for future mysteries.
Yeah, and you can also leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, and you can put your thoughts in there as well.
Remember to pick up your copy of Science and Nature for more mysteries of science, as well as in-depth features, news stories, interviews, and much more.
We will be back in 2 weeks with another episode. This time, Dan and I are going to be investigating one of the most awe-inspiring mythical creatures of all. It's the dragon. Do these winged beasts really exist? If not, what inspired their stories? It's a mystery that covers hundreds of millions of years, and you won't want to miss out. But until then, stay curious.
If you want to get your hands on a copy of the Week Junior magazine, we're offering a 6-week free trial. To get yours, head over to dennismags.co.uk /The Week Junior and use the code PODCAST.